My name is Mareledi Fantan from Palabs. I went to Sonny Hill School in 1966 up to 1970, whereupon then I got a scholarship from the then DBS Botswana Mining Company, which is now the Botswana, and I went to do my degree there in electrical and electronics engineering, and I've worked for the Botswana for about 30 years, and then retired about 5.5 years back from my own company with some of my colleagues called 6+1 Consultants, and we do all various works. That is how Soneng got me to where I am. But maybe you want to know the history about the influence of Soneng or how I got there. I would probably describe Soneng Hill School as, I said last time, a cosmopolitan school, in the manner in which the types or the cross-section of people that enable the rich and the poor, unlike some schools today who are very prominent schools saying only the rich can go to. I'm not being funny, but I mean that's the case. But Soneng was cross-section, and it also took the privileged and the underprivileged, and all sorts of people and all nations from north and south of here, in that we had a cross-section of South Africa refugee students, some much older than us, and a lot of people from Zimbabwe, because then it was also going through the same turmoil. So that was Soneng to me. And what do you get out of it? I think a lot of people have learned a lot of life skill in addition to just formal education out of that. And I can explain to you that the learning of those life skills actually did not detract us from concentrating on formal classroom, examinable type paper education, if I can describe it like that. Perhaps why I say cosmopolitan school, in the sense that if I had not got myself to Serowe and to go to Soneng, I would not have been to school. If I had tried to go to any other school other than Soneng, I would not have got in. One, because all the other schools require that uniform, they require that you pay school fees ahead of time, etc., and all those things. And although because I had got a first class, standard 7. So, and then I had applied to Soneng as well. And in those days, but I couldn't afford. I was quite sensible. I couldn't afford to even just get from Palapekwa so, and my grandmother then was sent blind, gave me she had £1 Then I took a ride on a truck, Mosnadi bus, to Serowe, and I went to some family, and there was no accommodation there. I went to another family, so they accommodated me, and I stayed there for the first, I think, year of my Form 1. But how I got into Form 1, the school fees, I had no bursary, I had nothing. So we get school, because negative, I reported, and they didn't ask me where is the deposit. I don't see 50% there. School was 75 rands, so I had to pop out 37 rand 50 cents. No, so I got registered. I didn't know how I was going to pay, so I got advice and I applied for a bursary to the Central District Council. District, but Central District, but in a certain autonomy, the bursary, educator, unlike home or the central government has taken over the distribution. So never have bursary. So I got a bursary from the
So they didn't kick you out
they
because
did
you
not
had
kick
no
me
deposit.
out. I had no deposit. I had no money. Right.
But they continued with you as a student.
I think it's just that this is where it takes the poor and the rich, that they recognize hore and there was no doubt hore I would be able to afford school fees straight away like this, right? But I think perhaps they're looking for good students at the school, so I got it. And
okay.
all right, cut the long story short, the application went through. I was a good student. So I mean, so in a way, I was then privileged as a result.
Yeah.
To have done so well. Now, life skills, Koswane. What I'm talking about here is that outside of the classroom, kadi weekend was at Artaha, even during the week, because we had big gardens, vegetable gardens. It's a school. We had a couple of Dukomo, more for teaching about animal husbandry. But Mashinyara no Farmers Brigade ultimately just next door to the school, to the east of the school. So near the Farmers Brigade in Ore no Hamiwa Mashite who dirisiwa one Mosquele. So you can see the garden is in the talk about the garden somebody. No be a garden boy at that time. So there were no such people. No but I mean massive gardens.
So the gardens provided for the diet of the school?
All vegetable. We didn't buy vegetables because but I can't remember which, although scenes are named rocky as it is. So those were some of the life skills. Because I didn't read the classroom, the school hall, the kitchen. How extend we are building art room, we built all those things. I can tell you the laboratory. Although a builders brigade as well. Qualified builders, and they volunteered their time. Some of them at weekends. That would demonstrate the corner muntu haya kwa actually foundation idirojang all the building techniques in the Batabari route. Although formerly in Oruta Builders Brigade. So the Lord God weekend day when I little roster long time only voluntary, but in the end we were no. Look, this is part of our life. So make a roster. Everybody does it. Unless we let Pito Ulala something else so we'll talk about pay. But otherwise in the resort this weekend Mama Kiwana Bahan Baba Duba Dak and we switch like that. Baba Apa. So near her therapy like some of the students did the cooking in the kitchen that we built. So that's how it was for us. Those are the life skills.
So the students didn't mind building the school?
Well, of course there are always some students who would but in the majority of cases the spirit of building a school around yourself, Salona, was inbuilt into people. In that nation, a lot of the teachers in the majority were either volunteers from the US or from the UK, or a lot of South African teachers. Very top class university material teachers. I think because of the political turmoil in South Africa. And because we didn't have universities or big tertiary institutions, they ended up teaching in schools like this. And because South Africa formally, I get it. So, and he was a political activist, while a core. And you can see how much black South Africans he would attract as a white man that stands up and says no to apartheid. That's how he came to South Africa, to Botswana, and decided not to be an activist here, but do something for this country. You know, if our schools today, even if they just took a percentage of what we gained from Sone and have it as a curriculum at schools, we would go a long way. The Young Farmers Fund, Kusida. children that go into it have got an idea of what it is.
To be a farmer.
If I wanted to be a building contractor at that time, I had an idea. Even if you build a house for me, not because I'm an engineer, but from the teaching life skills, the early days. Why are you not putting A, B, C, D in it? So those things, basic things we were taught at that early stage, and they don't evaporate.
They stay.
They stay for a very, very long time. So those are some of the things maybe more ought to be part of the curriculum, and let it be compulsory.
It's kind of choice.
Because life skill is life skill. But you can't make religious education compulsory for me, or learning Setswana to be compulsory. If my life, I don't intend to use the language for any profession or whatever future, don't force me to do it. But surely if you teach me life skills that I can live with, I don't have to be a builder. I'm going to need that knowledge.
Because one day you will
build my own house.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Because everybody's going to build their own house. So mostly but I was unaware of it. How you are under so much pressure, and because too much, then I'm under pressure to actually do that. And I did that.
And you did that.
I did that all the way from Form 1 to Form 5. Example, Form 3, there was 3, first class. And then
second
you get
class.
you get a first class with a merit, which is super first class. So 3 people got super first class at Form 3 in Botswana. It was myself, Professor Sheila Tlo, Naleko Khale. I'm glad I didn't go to Khale, because they would have had a big, one of us should have been number 1, then it should have been me. And then Romana So good choice for me not to go to any of those 2 schools. So that was I was in that group of people countrywide
that were doing exceedingly well.
Form 5, I was number 2 in the country. So I think number 1 actually 12 points. I had 15. The lower the numbers you had, the better, because how A1 especially get 1. 6. I got the 6 subject. I was 1. So not only tough. So I was number 2 in the country at the time. But by the time the result was existing, go UK. Similar to my engineering course. So that's me. Playful wise, my work discipline. There was a lot of discipline in Goswani, because Nernale Batu, Bunkolembang, video prefect, but no tell class when a leader, never sabi prefect, Babamaya, but never be done ditch. Ditch whatever Paniana, Zuhile Pizza, somebody Kinosi, George Kinosi, and people like that. What one the leader Rona, Nernale class, Roma, the vote so considerable or councillor of Palape or the ruling party. They were more talk at the Zoba, Habangan, Bokan, big clan. So the Nali group at Lasarona, a disciplinary type committee, but self-mandated. There's a square or any system square, but in the ring, anybody that is out of line must go and discipline. And the discipline of our doing or a report, particularly about Lasaron, Yahoo was at the board. Then we discipline. Never is a two. But the rebels are going to Sujana, but this had the rage in public, like anyone Saddam we say in America. So, last have many video Concordia. I can't remember nearly 14, 15 or thereabouts. makolwana a teng here and go ne go na le mosimane o mongwe a ke batho bua leina la gagwe ma ke bua hela na bidwa go te Raf, so nobody will know except ba Concordia. Ne le mosimane hela a sa utlwela mo sekola a rata go tshameka bothaswana. Sometimes you'll just pass water on the wall or go and make noise at the girls' dormitories. Or when you took this boy aside. Ne re sekisa pele as gore ne re go betsa hela there was a tribunal go tshokodisa ke ba botsa dipotso gore Isaac Mogalakwe mo Mahalateng. Unfortunately he went blind, but he was a very, very jovious person as well. Ne le bangwe ba tribunal ba ile gore o tabo o budiwa dipotso ya la o budiwa dipotso ra go bona gore no, you are guilty of misconduct or being a nuisance go di dormitory tsa basetsana, and ro go athola ditupa leka, and ditupa tsa bona is less than 5 5 upwards go dependa hela on botho ja gago a re ntse re go sekisa gore go itshwarela. And then we didn't ask you to submit to flog, we just picked you up to 4 guys, 1 leg, 2, 1 arm, we're all suspended there. Ona le ba thudi ba o thai bo re Leonard Samboma le re mitsa dwafu ke re ko maungo go ta mmana the dimaro ile bo ona wa mo pati khosi khumo thoka hetse tsala ba go soro ke bana ba thwanela gore ke ba o thai ka gore ne ba khola o tsholetsa le tsogo thupo gore ha ya go goela go tore what's happening to you. So that was our class.
Tell me what you think about Patrick van Rensburg now.
If I have to cast an opinion about him or his deeds, I wouldn't confine them to Sorowe. I think Sorowe was just a base. I mean, if you do something, you have to do it somewhere. It was a cosmopolitan school. And forget the poor and see the demography about the age group was very vast. Because they had missed the opportunity. They were given the second chance. There were poor people like ourselves who walked in and had no school fees. But here I am, right? They were fellow students, Babastana, had children. Right? In those days, it was difficult for you to be accepted back to the same school, or indeed to any of the schools. These are, it's not a misfortune to have a child, but there are mistakes that befall children, and mostly female children. That school gave you the chance to continue, and that's the way the cosmopolitan nature not that it's teenage pregnancy. I'm not talking about that.
But older women who wanted to go to school.
Students, yes. So, and they were allowed to come back, right? Cosmopolitan, Sorowe was a base which stretched to then Shasha. Since sa who ke bana ba skwele go ne go dua work camp go wa Shasha go skwele teng, right? Sa because ne go tetse go swane ne go floga batho ba thone ba ta teng despite the informality of the dress code, etc., and all those things, right? But the teaching there lured a lot of students to that school, and I think a lot of parents in the barata so banabande ba go swane that's across this country, that's from outside of the borders of this country. I've mentioned South Africa, significant big numbers, right? Now I'm a refugee, I don't know, I get it. And then it is one of the schools Zimbabwe political brief they came to Sonny Hill School. So Ref van Rensburg, his deeds are not for Sorowe. Sorowe may have enjoyed more because they were close, right? Rubbed shoulders with him and everybody that he influenced to go this route of education, with development, not just to learn how to 1, 2, 3, but to actually build something. And that to me is an impression of what he's done for this country. Honoring Van Rensburg by making a monument, writing a book about him, or giving him medals, really to me doesn't mean much. Honoring those ideas that he sold here and have sustained a lot of us and could do so in the future would be for us to relook at our education and say, can't we bring in at least a percentage of that skills tutorial, right? That would be a great honor to somebody who started something in this country. You can only honor somebody by carrying on their legacy, not making a monument for them that people walk past and say, who's that, or who was that? I thought maybe you should talk to the minister or education, technology, science, etc. Because it's in a nice grade. She was our classmate. We all grew under the influence of Van Rensburg. And I think there are people who are much closer to that man or to what he did as well. Might give you an even better view or opinion. But monument to me, writing books about him, it's history. It goes in books. The only honor that can be given is for that man's ideas to be rekindled in this country.
Okay. No, thank you for your input.
That's what I think about it.
Okay. Any last words?
You were asking, you've got a question that's talk about bad incidents, unruly characters at school, etc., etc. Of course, every school has got those people. It depends on how tight the discipline is at the school. Now, Swanen taught you to discipline yourself in many instances because there was no flogging, there was no corporal punishment, there was little or no expulsion of students for doing bad things at school unless you fought in a manner that really you were a threat to other students. But I don't recall those incidents. But still, being cosmopolitan, obviously, Rona, Basimane ba Botswana le Basetsana ba Botswana, Mataka de Machiria Zongo South Africa. I get Majida de never bit was Vaile, Gisabores Vaile, Samaili, and all that. Never Samaka this time. So, never the group it's about. Of course, it's about Zimbabwe. Occasionally, we had a small group in Star, Basimane Bakobo Kalaka versus Basimane Bazanka Kono Hotel South. But those didn't cause too much trouble. But there was a lot of fights between South Africa and Botswana. Boholo ya Botswana ba go motse. I couldn't never about Dono Basimane ba South Africa. So no go no amajwala wa bona ka di weekend go tsana mo motse go no adi card ya or what we did match. And then they will obviously banal girlfriend mo motseng and Majita ba motse la ba ba sa tsene go swane ba squeala ke so le bona ne bana di geng tsa bona and go khona go go itwe face. No, not that we were in it, but those were the unruly behaviors that we had. But no, South Africa, I remember a guy called Mzimkulu Zomdak, a very quiet guy. Tamale knows. Any na beta bone ba ga bone. I get that the robots are like Hakal. Nasi Burumulana, Bamurumun. South Africa. So those were the sort of incidents in the
But they happened outside the school amongst the students.
No.
Okay. Okay.